What is up, guys? Mad Rambles, episode 65. As you can probably see, the camera isn't the same today. That will be returning, but for the next 2 days, just while I travel and pack things, I won't be able to use it. So I'll start my keys to improve on for this week, and that being recording on a better camera. But like I said, for the next 2 days, I can't. Editing the video to help it flow better. This is something I've actually thought about. And I've thought about, does editing the video take away from the point of this whole video? Because I found myself, when I speak normally, I'm concentrating on trying to form coherent thoughts and speak without mistakes. And that it helps me improve my speech. But then when I am able to edit it out, I feel like it doesn't quite flow in the sense of it's not organic. You know, it's sort of manufactured because I can cut bits out, I can speed bits up, I can sort of replace bits, whatever it is. And that way, I have room for failure. And the whole point is for me to just get comfortable with talking, get comfortable with me looking in the camera, get comfortable with me posting these videos. And that sort of negates that. So that I don't think is something I'm going to continue with, at least for these 100 videos. So for the next 35 videos, I will maintain unedited. We'll record on a better camera though, but unedited videos in order to get my genuine thoughts. So, episode 65 today. Today's title is ego. Within that, I'm going to talk about 4 things. How ego prohibits the truth. Can you really achieve your highest potential with an ego? Is an ego necessary? And life without an ego. So, ego is something that throughout my life, I've gone from stage of thinking it's good, it's bad, you need it, you don't. And whenever you listen to someone in the public eye, someone who's quote unquote educational or worthy of listening to, so many of them contradict this. Some are like, oh, you need no ego to fully achieve your potential. Some of them are like, it's like, an ego is necessary, especially in the fighting world. An ego is necessary to become the best fighter. Then you hear people talk like Mike Tyson saying that ego is horrible. So, who is right? What is the fucking truth? And like everything in this day and age, there will always be things for it and there will always be things against. So navigating a world in which you don't really know the answer because everything's the fucking answer, it can be hard sometimes. So I'm gonna propose my opinions, my feelings, my thoughts on it. And ultimately that is that an ego is necessary. I do think everyone needs an ego, but I think to the extent you protect and how high you hold that ego really is what's important. I think it shouldn't get in the way of your life. I think you need an ego because it enables self-respect. You see people who have no egos, seems like they have no self-respect as a result. These people are walked over. And life without an ego is shit, you know. They get walked over, people take the piss out of them, and then they have no sort of fight back because they don't have that fire, they don't have that ego to sort of combat it. And they just get walked over. And they achieve nothing in life because they have no self-respect. So I think a lot of people, most people, when they don't have an ego, they tend not to have self-respect. And that's why I think an ego is important, because an ego is a form of self-respect. You see yourself highly, you see yourself worthy, you see yourself more important than you potentially are. However, that is where it comes a point where you sort of have that happy medium and then you go over it and you're like, all right, your ego isn't doing you justice. And I think it doesn't do people justice when it prohibits the truth and it stops you from achieving your highest potential. So many people I see are unwilling to fail, are unwilling to hear genuine constructive criticism purely because it will hurt their ego. They're like, I can't be wrong. I'm never wrong. I can never be wrong. And that just stops you from learning how you can improve. If I sat here every day and went in my videos, fucking shit, right? Best videos on YouTube, I would never get better. And they'd stay mediocre at best. So it's that it's that happy medium. When your ego is too high, it can be damning, but when it isn't high enough, it can also be damning. So like a lot of things, it's about finding that sort of happy medium, utilizing and cultivating an ego that comes from more self-respect, but having the intelligence to acknowledge when your ego is taking a hold, right? And your potential sort of sits on the back burner. Because the minute that you sort of don't want to hear criticism, don't want to understand how to get better because you feel like you're the greatest, you're the best, that's when your ego becomes too much. And that's when you have problems with it. So an ego for me is necessary. An ego is extremely important in this world. However, the extent of which the extent of our ego is what's important. I think it needs to be sort of small and minute, enough to claim respect of your life and be respectful of yourself and those around you. However, not high enough so that you can never feel like you can never be wrong. And ego also stops people. It almost, when I say it stops people, prohibits the truth. Because so much in society, people marry their opinions and thoughts with their personality, with who they are. It's like, I'm Labour, I'm Conservative, it's me. And then their ego gets in the way because they're thinking, how can I be wrong? How can I not always be right? When ultimately, just because you might have been Labour 5 years ago doesn't mean everything Labour's going to do is good. Not just that, is just because you were something 10 years ago doesn't mean they're good now, right? And I think that comes with analysing and understanding that you aren't your viewpoints, right? You aren't your opinions. But people get so attached to these opinions that their opinions become who they are, and then their ego stops them from ever being wrong, right? It's like, oh, if my viewpoint is me, and if you're saying that I'm wrong, or my viewpoint is wrong, you're therefore saying that I'm wrong, and therefore I can never be wrong, because why the fuck, how can you say that? I'm never wrong. That's because their ego's too fucking high. Where they should be like, you know what? In this circumstance, I'm wrong. In others, I was right. But in this circumstance, I'm wrong. I may have voted for the right person 10 years ago, but they're not the same now. Therefore, if I was to vote for them now, I would be wrong. However, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a hit on the chin. I'm going to acknowledge I'm wrong. I'm going to find out how I can improve. I'm going to do more research and understand what would actually be better for myself and society. I'm going to go out and do it. And that way, I'm going to get the most evaluated and valuable opinion possible. But that starts with not having an ego. And I think too many people covet their egos too highly. And I think when an ego stops purely just being about self-respect, becomes more about personal opinions, becomes more about like what you're doing in your day-to-day life, how you look, and there isn't an element of constructive criticism to it, then that's when it gets damaging. And this is the case that I've seen for most people. Most people's egos are so fucking high, not even because they realise it. You'll see a lot of people who are nice people, who are kind people, but then they have this sort of ego with certain things. And again, this is another thing. Just because you're maybe egotistical in certain aspects doesn't mean you're egotistical in everything. Right? I think that's also a mistake people make. People see people who are egotistical. Maybe some people have a large ego that encompasses everything, but there are others that have an ego in certain areas, right? Maybe someone who does lots of sport and they put lots of time into it, and they feel like because they've put a lot of time into it, they're worthy of always being right. But ultimately, they're not. That's just fucking life. Fucking Mike Tyson, right? Done his 10,000 hours boxing, but if he steps in, right, and someone comes up and does something he doesn't know, he's not going to just sit there and go, "Oh, I've done so much boxing. How can you do something I don't know?" No, he's going to sit there and fucking learn. Alright, that would be actually useful. How can I do that? Alright, cool. I'll implement that. You know, that's through the process of learning, understanding, putting your ego aside and actually thinking about how I can get better. And it doesn't matter if that's with one thing, two things, it needs to be with everything. right? And just because you feel like you don't have an ego with sport or with whatever it is area you are, you may have it in other areas. And just because you may have it in one area doesn't mean that it's still fine. You shouldn't have an ego in every area, because the minimization of an ego is where improvement comes from, and that's how you achieve your highest potential. Been good, cool. I've been Keelan. Peace.